textile, leather, that whole space. That will be our big push. We believe that in that space, we will not only create jobs, but we will create wealth. You know, we will create wealth. We need to, even as we focus in investing in big infrastructure, we must focus in areas that create jobs and put money in people's pockets. That's really important. And then, of course, finally, I've said finally now 3 times. I think I'll say it one more time and then I'm done. Agricultural productivity is going to be a big area for us. When I say agricultural productivity, I mean, for example, our farmers today, maize farmers, produce 5-6 bags, maybe 10 an acre. We can push that to 20. The same farmer, same farm, we can do 20 and or 15 for that matter. Just by making sure that we get the correct seeds, we make sure that they have access to quality, affordable fertilizer, and just a bit of management and removing the cartels and the brokers from the market, you know, making sure that the market is cleaned up. Example, we are the largest producer of milk, I think, in this continent. We produce about 5 billion liters of milk. But on average, we are actually producing between maybe maximum 3 or 4 kilos per cow. In fact, in Kajiado, that lady said they were producing what? 2. 1.5, between 1.5 and 2. Actually, if we just improved on animal feed, and we are importing now, the big people are importing animal feed. So I was saying we produce 5 billion liters. We can actually double our production of milk without much effort. Same cow, same farmer, just making sure that they have access to animal feed. And we have already discussed with farmers when we had the economic discussion in Kakamega and Bungoma. These are farmers who are saying, give us an opportunity to produce soya, to produce simsim. We will make much more money from that than from cane, and you will get the raw materials to do your animal feed. So this is the space we are looking at. And if we can improve our cow producing 2 liters and make it produce 5 liters, we will double our production of milk. And even if we sold it at the lowest price, we can make another 150 billion shillings into our foreign exchange earnings. Instead of, I'm happy we are not, instead of many of our neighbors in DRC importing milk from Australia, I think from Kenya is much more near. You can take the milk there and all the other places. So this is what I wanted finally to say. And He has said clearly that we are going to work on universal health. Universal health is going to be a very big push for us. We believe that it's doable, and if we can structure it, we can get it done. We are looking at working with you on finally the space on investing in climate, seeing what we can do in that space of climate, especially that it affects our agriculture, which contributes significantly to our GDP. I know I have spoken longer than I should, but I thought it is important. In the community I come from, they say, if you want to fight with somebody, you don't tell them, let's look for a good place to fight. Where you meet them, you square it out. So maybe we have been looking for an opportunity to share this with you. Maybe this was not the correct moment. But since we found it anyway, we decided. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We're running a little behind schedule, so I'm going to toss this ball back to your court, Ambassador Geiger, and I'll now invite yourself and your team to respond to the submission by His Excellency the Deputy President, but also just generally raise any issues, and from our side, we will make responses led by our Deputy President Designate, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, Governor Waiguru, Honorable Moses Wetangula, Honorable Moses Kuria, and yes.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Excellencies. Karibuni sana, our Deputy President and Presidential Candidate, our political leaders, Musalia Mudavadi, Wetangula, Hono Wetangula, Mutua, Governor Mutua, and others. I'm not going to go through all of you, but I guess I'll stick with the all protocols observed sort of thing. Let me acknowledge my colleagues, Professor Ndungu, Dr. Sianga there, and my technical team here. Mine is very brief. It is just to provide an overview of what our economic platform and our policy platform is. I said my name is David Day. I lead the policy and platforms team, economic platform team of this campaign. Those of you who follow a bit of our media will have watched some of our town hall engagements with people around their economic issues. And I want to start by pointing out that our objective is not just to have an economic platform, but also to change the conversation in our politics. We're trying to engineer a paradigm shift from conversation about power and positions and all sorts of things of that nature to policies and the programs and the issues that are of interest to the people. And I think we are succeeding. Our policy program is called bottom-up economics, and it's not. It is now all the rage around the world. We've been probably talking about it longer than many people who've made it famous, like the US. So I'll just highlight why we think that is the way to go for Kenya, and that should be the political platform about our socio-economic transformation. We have based that on three principles. We think that there are three principles that underpin this platform. One is that markets must work for everyone. When I was working in the development world about 2 decades ago, there was a conversation going around saying markets, making markets work for the poor. But I said, no, not just for the poor. They must work for the poor, but they must work for everyone. I believe even in the countries you come from, this conversation is going on about whether markets are working for everyone, about the sort of capture of political process by the corporate big and market power, the exercise of market power, both in the economy and as something that is a threat to the democratic process. So that's one of the key things, that markets must work for everyone, and in this country they must absolutely work for the majority, which they are not. Markets are working for very small people. Obviously, in poor countries, you have challenges of systemic market failures, which Professor Ndungu can probably talk about better than me. That's what he does that's his day job, to look at such things. But also, markets are being undermined very fundamentally at the rule of law level by chronic capitalism and state capture. That's something that we are very alive to, and that we have to, that's a political economy problem, and that's something that can only be confronted politically. The second principle in this country is very specific to this country, and it's about distribution of capital, ownership and distribution of capital. We are an entrepreneurial economy. But if you look at how capital is allocated in this country, capital should be distributed so that it can raise the productivity of the labor force. But if you look at this country, where the capital is and where the labor force is not the same place. So capital is too concentrated in a few hands and enterprises, where it creates highly profitable enterprises, but it undermines the productivity and employment in the economy. So we need to have a conversation around how do we distribute capital, redistribute capital, so that it goes to where it can raise productivity and address issues of poverty and inequality and many other things that are undermining a threat to stability and livelihoods of people. The third theme is around social protection. And again, here is an issue of inequality, that if you look at our legacy social protection systems around health, around old age security, around various things, they have a very narrow base. They are designed around an elite, shall you say, structure because of our colonial legacy. They are not fit for purpose. So the principle here is a principle of universalism. That we need social protection systems that are universal, that reach everyone, that are equitable and not regressive, and within that we need to look at our pension systems, NSI for our healthcare, insurance type issues, workforce sort of protection. All those rubric of what then, because that's how then economy translates to human development. Those are the principles. Question of making markets work, having a system of equitable distribution of capital. We don't want concentration of capital in this sort of society undermines growth and productivity and incomes. As well as the question of fit for purpose, social protection and institutions. Those are the principles. In terms of actual translation of those into policy and programs, we have organized ourselves, our priorities around 4 pillars. Pillar 1 is agriculture-led growth. We are making a statement that we believe at our Kenya right now, the way out of many of the immediate challenges we are facing, economic debt, whatever, has to be starting with agriculture, which is what is at the bottom of our economy, the primary economy. That's where most of people are working. That's where our capital is. That's where our labor force is. That's where our competitiveness is. And by focusing on agriculture very squarely, we think that's where we're going to get inclusive growth. That is where we can get immediate supply response and bounce back on the balance of payment side, because that's where our exports can grow fastest. That's where we can increase exports most quickly. And also there are areas that we can substitute imports, particularly in the area of food. You're familiar with the kind of crisis that is caused in the commodities, particularly agricultural commodities, by the Ukraine war, those kind of shocks. And therefore, in this country, over the last couple of decades, we have seen a huge increase in dependence on food imports, which are now having this kind of macroeconomic impact. And those reflect largely the neglect of agriculture and stagnating productivity, and that's one of the things we need to address. So growth and incomes, the external imbalances that we have. The third thing that it will help is with cost of living, particularly for urban poor households, because half and more of the income, the expenditures of our urban households, and including rural ones actually, are on food. So intervention in agriculture is the way to keep food prices down, and by keeping food prices down, you increase the discretionary incomes of people, and that will probably give you a bigger multiplier effect in the other sectors. And of course, food security particularly, we are very much focused on food security, particularly for the poorest households, because most of our poorest households are farmers. They are resource poor farmers. So the way to address that food insecurity is in fact to raise their productivity because they are mostly semi-subsistence farmers. So we actually need to increase the productivity of subsistence agriculture. And the fourth thing is jobs. We see most of the jobs immediately coming out of agribusiness. That is both sides of the agricultural value chain, from the input side and then on the output sides, post-harvest better post-harvest management. We lose a lot of our produce in post-harvest. There are opportunities there. So we see these challenges as opportunities. Solving these problems will in fact create jobs. So the second pillar is micro and small enterprises. Outside smallholder agriculture, this is where most Kenyans work. Over 85% of non-farm jobs are in micro and small enterprises. But the vast majority of the people there, in our estimate about 10 million, actually have no capital to work with. A huge part of it is actually just mitigating open unemployment. So we don't think that in the short run we are going to create jobs for those people by bringing in new investments in large enterprises and corporates. We're going to create jobs for those people by raising their productivity and their incomes where they are. And that's why our focus there is on how we create an enabling environment for the micro and enterprises. And some of the interventions we need there are around property rights, about the regime, about business support services, but also about access to finance. Business, particularly for small businesses. And you increasingly find that when people have health shocks and they don't have health cover, then they take money out of their businesses to take care of illnesses. So there is a direct connection there, which I don't think needs to be belabored. The fourth pillar is housing and settlement. And the reason for that also is, if you look at our demographic structure, you will see we have a big thing we call the youth bulge. Our population is young. The bulk is really in their late teens now, mid-teens and early 20s. And when people grow up, after that stage, they do something called household formation. They move out of their parents' houses to their own houses. And then they start families. So that is the big thing that we are going to be seeing, social sort of dynamic, demographic dynamic that we are going to be seeing in this country over the next decade, couple of decades. And therefore you have to ask, how are those people enabled? It's both an imperative, because if we don't provide affordable housing, it's going to happen anyway. So what you get is unplanned urbanization, bad settlement patterns, yet it creates a huge opportunity in terms of the housing market, in terms of its connections with the micro and small enterprises, Jua Kali as we call it in Kenya, being a producer of housing and housing goods. And the second part about settlement has also to do with our land use and agriculture, access to land. As I said, we are still an agricultural country. It has to do with the environment. Because what you see now is that the demographic pressure is pushing more and more people into ecologically sensitive places. And in the face of the kind of climate change and the resilience that we need to think about how we stop that, how we reclaim and increase our forest cover, how to ensure that we reduce the environmental stress, particularly between people competing with nature. And to do that, we have to think very seriously and have very deliberate interventions around settlement patterns and people's access to agricultural land. So these things are not mutually exclusive. Each of them is connected to the other. But that in a nutshell. It obviously is not comprehensive, but those are the things that we see will hit the most birds that we need to hit with as few stones as possible. So thank you very much. And that, I think, is all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Dr. Ndi. The EU established a diplomatic presence here in 1976. In that 46 years, our relationship has grown to what I indicated in my introduction as now Kenya-EU strategic dialogue. In that period, the European Union has also grown to become Kenya's largest trading partner, accounting for 17.2% of Kenya's overall trade. The EU is also today Kenya's second largest market, with average exports amounting to 1.4 for Kandara. Honorable Gladys Shalay, the Member of Parliament for Uasin Gishu County, our delegation this morning also includes some key members of our economic team, and they include Dr.
So there are plenty of things that we would like to go into detail about, but I hope that this is not the last time that we meet. We can meet in smaller groups also at a later stage, and we can, after this meeting, also give you more details about how we see things and what our vision would be. But I would like to just close here. So as I said before, our interest is to have a free-flowing question and answer session rather than prepared speeches. So thank you very much. The fact that so many ambassadors came this morning shows our keen interest in Kenya. We take this very seriously. We also take the elections very seriously. And we really do hope that everybody takes their responsibility here, because as I said before, Kenya is a stable rock in turbid waters, and we want to keep it like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Gaiga. Indeed, we do cherish the very special relationship between Kenya and the EU. Besides the development cooperation, the EU has been a key ally for this country. I do recall at the time when I served as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the EU was very supportive of Kenya's bid to sit on the UN Security Council. And even during the month of October, when Kenya was president of the EU Security Council, again the EU was very supportive. And so we acknowledge that support. You have continued to be a partner, even on regional peace and security initiatives like AMISOM, and we know that EU continues to be a key actor in our efforts to help stabilize this region. And indeed, our presidential candidate has been very engaged, and our whole team also continues to be very engaged. On February 15 this year, our presidential candidate actually had a very substantive engagement with the European Business Council that delved deep into issues of a business environment. And we have also had occasion to meet the exploratory mission for observation of the elections. Let me now take this opportunity to invite His Excellency Dr. William RUTO, Deputy President and our presidential candidate. And at the conclusion of his remarks, we will have that open interaction. You're welcome, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Ababu Namwamba. Your Excellency, the leader of this delegation, Your Excellency, ambassadors, members of the Kenya Kwanza team. First, let me welcome all of us to this morning breakfast at this residence. It's commonly known as the Hustler's Mansion. It was labeled by the press, so I decided to adopt it. Anyway, it's not a bad name. So welcome. I understand very well that this is supposed to be an interactive session where we can all participate rather than a session to make speeches. But just allow me to say a few things. One, we appreciate the place of the EU in the relationship we have with partners. The EU, as has been said here, is the largest trading partner of Kenya. That's not a small thing. We value that status, and therefore engagement with our largest trading partner is important to us as Kenya Kwanza and as Kenyans. Number two, you are our second largest market. Again, that is very important to us. Even in our focus on the economy, market is a big thing. And therefore, we believe an engagement with you is an engagement in the right direction. And then number three, the EU is also the second largest development partner for Kenya outside the World Bank. Therefore, again, that places the EU in a very pivotal place. Having said that, let me let you know that from Kenya Kwanza, you wouldn't experience a major shift in our relationship because I have been part and parcel of the administration that is outgoing, and therefore I understand full well many of the engagements that we've had, the new Kenya-EU strategic dialogue that now gives us a framework for the relationship going all the way to 2027. And we appreciate that that became necessary because of the strategic nature of our relationship. And as has been said ably by the leader of this delegation, the position of Kenya in this region and globally. We will seek to step up, conclude the economic partnership agreement. I know there are still some pending issues. We will work with you. I have been engaged in different ways in trying to conclude that relationship. We know there are little outstanding issues. We will work with you to make sure that that is concluded, and especially in the context of the admission of the DRC into EAC. So that gives us expanded opportunity, even for the EU. It is, I think it's a development in the right direction. Kenya will also be looking at opportunities, of course, provided for by the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Again, we can build synergy between Kenya and the EU to see how our relationship, our strategic relationship, can leverage also on the market and all the other opportunities that come with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We will have a discussion, hopefully, about what we can do more. As Kenya Kwanza, we will be looking at opportunities on what we can export more to the EU. We know that you are interested in having a balanced relationship. And sometimes it's our fault that we do not push hard enough to access markets that are available to us. I want to promise you that as an administration or as a team, we will work towards seeing what other opportunities in textile products, in leather products, in where Kenya has competitive advantage, what we can do more in processing, agro-processing, value addition. I was speaking to one of our manufacturers yesterday, not manufacturers, our enterprises in Mombasa, who is now packing the Lipton tea in Mombasa. And those are the strategic relationships we will be looking at. We still export our tea largely in bulk. We will want to look at what we can do with the EU, because that single entity in Mombasa, and I promised to visit, employs 1,000 Kenyans. We are hardly value adding 5% of our tea. Kenya Kwanza would want to see whether we can push that to 20, 30, possibly 50%. I had also, just to mention, I had an occasion. I met the Indian community in Nairobi, and one of them gave us, and members of this team were there, gave us an incident where he was in Egypt, and they were served very nice tea. So when he was leaving, you remember he said this is very nice tea. So he ordered several packets of the tea because he wanted to come and enjoy the tea in Kenya. So when he arrived in Nairobi and he told his wife, please, I got some tea from Egypt. We enjoyed it, it was very nice. So when his wife opened, there was like a small label there, said, manufactured in Kenya. And he had gone all the way to Egypt to buy. So this is what we are saying, that there is more we can do here, and yet the tea was just packed in Egypt. So those are the opportunities we will be looking at to explore between us and you. We are looking at working with you on our regional security. Kenya, sitting in the Security Council, is a very pivotal place. But you all know we live in a very slippery neighborhood because of terrorism and the whole challenge around insecurity. We will work with you to see what we can do more with IGAD, with ICGLR, and see what we can do in Somalia, in Sudan, South Sudan, and even Ethiopia, because we want to live in a safe neighborhood. It is undermining our growth as a country. We will also want to work with you because the issue of climate change is beginning to hurt us. For 3 years consecutive, we haven't had consistent rains. This year, we're just crossing our fingers because we have a challenge even as we talk. So again, these are areas where we will want to work together to see whether what we can do more, what we can do better, to see how we can mitigate that. We are also keen as a team on making sure that this election is free, fair, and democratic. We are very clear that as we go into this election, first, we believe as the Kenya Kwanza team that the way to the future is to complete the implementation of the 2010 Constitution, not to amend it. We don't believe that mutilating the Constitution before its full implementation is the way to go. we believe that we should operationalize all the institutions already provided in the 2010 Constitution. We believe, for example, that we should operationalize the judiciary fund and make the judiciary that much more independent and efficient. That's very critical to us. We believe that the criminal justice operators should have financial autonomy. As it is today, though the Constitution says the Inspector General of Police should have financial autonomy, it does not have. It is still subject to the office of the President. And we all know the old saying that he who pays the piper calls the tune. The Kenya Kwanza government, God willing, we should be able to operationalize such institutions, give financial autonomy where one is necessary, and we believe it is, so that we can realize the full potential of the 2010 Constitution and be able to use it as a thrust to move the country into the future. We are also very keen on ensuring that the big subject of gender is addressed as we go into the future. As a team, first we have undertaken that though the Constitution says 30% of all positions, elective and appointive, must go to women, for a start, we want to start with 50% of our cabinet to be women. And we want to progress that. We want to progress that and see how we can realize the 2/3 gender rule within our first year, by God's grace, in government. As things stand today, Kenya Kwanza has the largest number of women candidates compared to all our competitors. In fact, out of the 9 governor candidates, 7 are Kenya Kwanza. And we believe out of the 7 candidates, we are more or less almost sure that 5 will be elected as governors. And we are working towards it. Because we do not want to pay lip service or play tokenism to the issue of gender, because we know its significance and we know the contribution our whole society can give. The question of integrity is of very high premium and significance to Kenya Kwanza. The fight against corruption is a fight that we must not only engage in, but we must win. It's the only way to the future. And I agree, for example, with the statements made by my boss yesterday, that corruption can be a big impediment to the development of a nation. We believe as Kenya Kwanza that the fight against corruption must be institutionalized and not personalized. It must be a fight against criminals from all shades. It must not be weaponized against your political opponents and the people you don't like, while protecting the corrupt who are your political allies, friends, or members of your family. We are very clear in our minds that institutionalizing the fight against corruption is building the capacities of the criminal justice system. And we are very clear as Kenya Kwanza that we need a financially independent judiciary. That's why we will operationalize the judiciary fund that will give resources to the judiciary to access software, hardware, human capital. As we talk, there is a huge gap of judges and magistrates that needs to be hired to expedite cases that now take anywhere between 5 and 15 years. You remember there was a case that was decided after 17 years by Kidongo the other day. And it is said justice delayed is justice denied. So our firm position as Kenya Kwanza is that the failure to fight corruption is when you undermine the institutions, the criminal justice system, by restricting their financial autonomy and by weaponizing the fight against corruption to be a fight against your political competitors. That is how, for example, the COVID billionaires escaped, because they were friends of the people who say they want to fight corruption. If the fight against corruption was left to the institutions, the COVID billionaires would be behind bars by now. And that's precisely what we are saying. We have taken the position that that fight should go all the way, and we should remove all opaque areas of procurement. We believe, for example, there must be a mechanism that ensures that Kenyans get value for money, even in procurement of some items classified as secret, confidential, security, that kind of thing. A lot is stolen under the cover of secrecy, security, confidentiality. That's how the public loses money. We also believe, as Kenya Kwanza, as I conclude, that multilateralism, quite mouthful there, and a peaceful resolution of issues is the way to go. I think the case in Ukraine is becoming increasingly clear that it's no longer possible for any part of the world to bury their heads in the sand when a situation like that occurs, because we all find ourselves one way or another affected. And therefore, we must continue to build alliances to deal with global challenges like the one that come with threats like the one we've seen in Ukraine. Finally, and let me just, Professor David Ndii is a very knowledgeable economist, but I am a scientist myself, and therefore I'm not as complicated as David Ndii. Science is very straightforward. So let me just try and paraphrase what he was trying to say. We have a 10-point plan as Kenya Kwanza, ably elaborated by our good friend David Ndii. And I want to thank members of our economic team, the representatives who are here. We have a bigger team than you have seen. David Ndii is a renowned economist. Our good brother, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, you know, he was our governor of the central bank. In fact, I can say without fear of any contradiction that it is the boldness and the creativity of Professor Ndung'u that gave us the M-Pesa. No other governor would have allowed the licensing of that instrument, because many people never believed in the risk that came with M-Pesa. But because of his boldness and creativity, I must say, in fact, when he licensed M-Pesa, many people were wondering whether he had made the right decision. But today, M-Pesa is a phenomenon associated with the whole digital financial space. So again, that is the gentleman behind that initiative, and he's brought a lot of insight into our economic team. The bottom-up economic model is not a model that promotes bottom versus up. It is bottom up. It's not bottom versus up. You know, there is a big push by our competitors that we are trying to promote a bottom versus up. It's not bottom versus up, it's bottom up. And from where I sit as a leader in Kenya, there are 3, 4, 5 issues that we must sort out. I'm happy His Excellency the President enumerated the 6 or 7 big push areas that we started with in 2013, from the construction of the railway to our development of roads around the country, the 10,000, which has become 11,000, the electricity connections, matters to do with NHIF. But what did not come out is the big 4, because the handshake completely annihilated the big 4. That's why there was no mention of the big 4 yesterday. Much as there was an attempt to explain that the handshake maybe helped finalize our first-term plan, but the handshake completely undermined our big 4. And it was a very well thought out plan, and we have crafted a new plan to take into account some of the things that were never implemented because of the confusion that arose because of the handshake stories. One of them is the huge challenge that we have as a country of the youth bulge and unemployment. Our own statistics show that we have between 4 and 5 million Kenyans who have no jobs, educated, certificates, diplomas, degrees. And the Kenya Kwanza team wants to be practical, pragmatic, and deliberate. Practical, pragmatic, and deliberate about creating jobs. It's not enough for us to continue to say we will grow the economy and the economy possibly could grow jobs. No. We want to be deliberate about creating jobs. And our investment going into the future is in labor-intensive infrastructure. We are going to be deliberate about investing in areas that will create jobs. Let me give you an example. We invested in a gun assembly factory in Ruiru. We spent 4 billion Kenya shillings. Good piece of investment, but we created 100 jobs. If we had put that 4 billion shillings in the EPZ, we would have created 5,000 jobs. Same amount of money in our apparel manufacture in the river, which we already have a market which we can't satisfy. If we had done the same in low-cost housing, it would be a different story. So we are going to be deliberate. Which are the areas we're going to look at? And that's why it's important for the EU to know. We are going to we are going to look at the space of the challenge we have with housing. We have 6 million Kenyans living in slums, informal settlements. We have 35,000 Kenyans paying mortgage. Our economy can support a 2 million mortgage industry, but we are not building houses that Kenyans can afford. So we will be looking at the subject of housing, one, to sort out the housing challenges that we have, but more importantly, to create jobs. What we all need is just an off-take plan, which we have already thought about it, and we are going to work with you on how that can come into place. We will be looking at the whole space, as I told you, on agro-processing and value addition. The primary reason why we drove the standard gauge railway to Naivasha is because we wanted to create an industrial park using the steam we have, using the energy we are generating using the geothermal in Naivasha, and along the entirety of that chain, how we can take it back to growing cotton. We are already growing quite a bit of it. We want to expand on BT cotton. We want to see the whole textile industry. We want to see what we can do with the whole of the leather industry. Today, we slaughter about 3 million cows every year in Kenya, but 60–70% of our hides and skin go to waste. It is actually burnt, sometimes buried, sometimes dogs eat. We were on Gachagua, we were in Kajiado on Friday. When was that? On Monday. And the pastoralists in Kajiado were telling us these skins, they are a menace because we have to bury them. And yet we import 22 million pairs of shoes every year into the country. So that's a big place for us to create jobs. Even if we start with the 10 million kids who go to school, and we purpose that we are going to manufacture shoes for our school-going kids, we will create 500,000 jobs, save on so much money we are spending to import shoes, and manufacture them locally. So, and we already have the cows, we're already slaughtering the cows, we have the hides and skins, they are going to waste, and that's really things that are readily available to us. We'll create jobs, we'll create wealth. The other one issue that, the second issue we want to address ourselves to is the issue of access to credit. Access to credit is a very big challenge in our great country. Let me just give you a bit of statistic there. I went to a market here in Kiserian, And on average, they pay 10% per day for the credit they access, 10% per day. That's the average. So that's about 3,600% per year. And these are people who make 200, 300 shillings on a good day from selling whatever they are selling. If we just sorted out credit for them, we can actually double their incomes just by sorting out credit, making sure that they have access to credit. And instruments are available that we can use to make credit accessible to these micro and small enterprises. We are talking about 15 million people in that space, 15 million, from government statistics. And these are people who are struggling. And it's growing. We inject about 1 million, just slightly under 1 million people into the job market every year. 50,000 are employed by the corporate world, another 150,000 employed by the larger SMEs, and then between 700 and 800,000 join the lottery. You know, place where they don't know what will happen. You know, guesswork. And that's so this lottery is what keeps on increasing. The 15 million who do odd jobs, you know, sell this today, sell that tomorrow. That's the place we really need to pay attention as we look into how to improve what we now call the Jua Kali, that employs about 3.5 million Kenyans. See how we can grow that, see how we can provide more skills. And that's why I am a very strong believer in Tibet, how we can bring more skills into that space of the Jua Kali and make it a real manufacturing space. So access to credit, skilling that area, focusing on wood products that we can absorb, textile, leather, that whole space. That will be our big push. We believe that in that space we will not only create jobs, but we will create wealth. You know, we will create wealth. We need even as we focus in investing in big infrastructure, we must focus in areas that create jobs and put money in people's pockets. That's really important. And then, of course, finally, I've said finally now 3 times. I think I'll say it one more time and then I'm done. Agricultural productivity is going to be a big area for us. When I say agricultural productivity, I mean, for example, our farmers today, maize farmers, produce 5-6 bags, maybe 10 an acre. We can push that to 20. The same farmer, same farm, we can do 20 and or 15 for that matter. Just by making sure that we get the correct seeds, we make sure that they have access to quality, affordable fertilizer, and just a bit of management and removing the cartels and the brokers from the market, you know, making sure that the market is cleaned up. Example, we are the largest producer of milk. I think in this continent we produce about 5 billion liters of milk. But on average, we are actually producing between maybe maximum 3 or 4 kilos per cow. In fact, in Kajiado, that lady said they were producing what? 2. 1.5, between 1.5 and 2. Actually, if we just improved on animal feed, and we are importing now, the big people are importing animal feed. So I was saying we produce 5 billion liters. We can actually double our production of milk without much effort. Same cow, same farmer, just making sure that they have access to animal feed. Animal feed. So, and we have already discussed with farmers when we had the economic discussion in Kakamega and Bungoma. These are farmers who are saying, give us an opportunity to produce soya, to produce simsim. We will make much more money from that than from cane, and you will get the raw materials to do your animal feed. So this is the space we are looking at. And if we can improve our cow producing 2 liters and make it produce 5 liters, we will double our production of milk. And even if we sold it at the lowest price, we can make another 150 billion shillings into our foreign exchange earnings. Instead of, I'm happy we are not, instead of many of our neighbors in DRC importing milk from Australia, I think from Kenya is much more near. We can take the milk there and all the other places. So this is what I wanted finally to say, and Dee has said clearly that we are going to work on universal health. Universal health is going to be a very big push for us. We believe that it's doable, and if we can structure it, we can get it done. We are looking at working with you on finally the space on investing in climate, seeing what we can do in that space of climate, especially that it affects our agriculture, which contributes significantly to our GDP. I know I have spoken longer than I should, but I thought it is important. In the community I come from, they say, if you want to fight with somebody, you don't tell them, let's look for a good place to fight. Where you meet them, you square it out. So maybe we have been looking for an opportunity to share this with you. Maybe this was not the correct moment. But since we found it anyway, we decided. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We're running a little behind schedule, so I'm going to toss this ball back to your court, Ambassador Geiger, and I'll now invite yourself and your team to respond to the submission by His Excellency the Deputy President, but also just generally raise any issues. And from our side, we will make responses led by our Deputy President Designate, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, Governor Waiguru, Honorable Moses Wetangula, Honorable Moses Kuria, and yes, but
So
are dangerous, especially when certain public officials are chest thumping that they have the so-called system and the deep state are dangerous, especially when certain public officials are chest thumping that they have the so-called system and the deep state
this government
Gor Mahia clinched the Madaraka Cup Wednesday evening after edging rivals FC Leopards 6-5 on post-match penalties at the Nyayo National Stadium in Nairobi after a 1-1 draw in regulation time. AFC struck fast in the 35th minute through Collins Shivachi. The lead lasted until the 60th minute when Ingwe Oldboy Austin Odhiambo drew Gor Mahia level. The scoreline remained locked at 1-1 and the winner had to be determined through spot kicks. The two sides struck home their respective penalties, but Peter Thiongo was the only blemish for AFC Leopards when his spot kick went over the bar. Odhiambo struck home the winning penalty to seal the win for Kogalo.
Enyi watu wa Galilaya, mbona mmesimama na kutazama juu mbinguni? Yesu atakuja tena jinsi hiyo hiyo mlivyomuona akipaa mbinguni. Haleluya. Kwa jina la Baba na la Mwana na Roho Mtakatifu. Neema ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo na upendo wa Mungu Baba na ushirika wa Roho Mtakatifu viwe nanyi nyote. Wapendwa, tumsifu Yesu Kristo. Twasherehekea sherehe za kupaa Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo, sherehe ambazo zinatukumbusha wakati Yesu alitamatisha kazi yake miongoni mwetu, akapaa akarudi alipokuwa ametoka mbinguni kwa Mungu Baba. Na kama vile tunavyokiri katika imani yetu, ameketi kuume kwa Mungu Baba, vile tunakumbushwa katika somo letu la pili. Na huko mbinguni amekuwa kuhani wetu mkuu ambaye analeta nia zetu, mahitaji yetu na maombi yetu mbele ya Mungu kila siku. Ndiye mchungaji wetu mkuu ambaye ametutanguliza, nasi tujitahidi katika kuishi kwetu, tuishi vema ili tutakapoondoka katika ulimwengu huu tuweze kufikia mahala ambapo yupo. Basi ili tuwe tayari kumtolea Mungu sadaka iliyo safi. Na sasa tukimie kidogo, tujute dhambi zetu. Namngamia Mungu Mwenyezi, nanyi ndugu zangu, kwani nimekosa mno